Good afternoon, Jackie Corasani. Welcome. Let's go.
And today our first presenter will be Sylvain Riendeau, and he is the president and CEO of the North American branch of ELPRO. He's a board member of the Berlinger USA. He's the founder and partner of Marietta Sensors and the owner and manager of the director of EF Scientific.
Most of you know my bio. I'm not going to go over that. Again, I'm president and CEO of ELPRO Services. So just to give you a little background about the company itself, it's a technology company. We provide temperature monitoring for clinical trials. So typically our customers are large pharmaceutical companies. So we ship product, and therefore they need to monitor the temperature during the clinical trial phase, which is typically phase 2 and phase 3. So we work close with the FDA guidelines and such. On the Berlinger side is a company that I established here in Marietta, Ohio, about 4 years ago. It's a temperature indicator in 2010. And this is a Swiss company that they were looking to have a presence in the United States. I got them established here in Marietta. And what they do is they do work for, again, temperature monitoring. There's our temperature indicators, and it's for the WHO, which is the World Health Organization. And so they monitor like vaccines for the H1N1. Anything that's a vaccine, the vaccine cannot freeze. So their product is widely used also for pharmaceutical, but also for WHO application. The Marietta sensor, it was an idea from 3 people. Then we said, I think there's a market and we're going to move forward with it. It's been interesting, challenging. One of the biggest challenges, you really have to dedicate time into a business. But when you run out of time, then it makes it more difficult because it's hard to get more traction. So basically, just to give you a little background about Marietta Sensor. Marietta Sensor is a technology business. The original concept was for colleges and universities, there needs to be a way for a student to communicate, hey, I need help, and this is where I'm at. I know most of you will say, well, I have a cell phone. The 3 partners went, okay, so the reason for our technology was because, when you get assaulted or something like that, you need to be able to deploy something quickly. So having a cell phone, you can't unlock your cell phone and start making a call. Then there's always the challenges of like, okay, I've made the call. I have to give the first responder where I'm at, the situation that I have or I'm encountering at the moment. And then so we thought, okay, this is going to be a home run. And we did. I mean, we started running with this, but it created we had a lot of challenges ahead of us for the simple fact that it's electronic. You have to put it together. You have to create molds. And then so all of a sudden it's like now we get into manufacturing. And so there's a whole learning curve about that too. Not only did we think of the colleges and university for this type of solution, but we thought also because I work closely with pharmaceutical company, like, the large ones, and then so they have big establishments. So they have people coming to site, on their site to work, and what if they need help and they can't get the right help at the right time? So having this solution, which is called a mesh network of drones. So then when you click on your button, then they know exactly where you are. A lot of you would say, well, wait a second, I have that on my cell phone where I have GPS. Unfortunately, with GPS it doesn't give you the height where you are within the building. It's just an X on Google Map. So basically how the system works is, just to give you a little background of the operation. So this is the device. And then so if somebody says, somebody grabs me or I'm not feeling well or something, I would simply just deploy it, and then it starts beeping away. And my information, which is my personal information, would be transmitted to what we call the mesh network, to the police department, the local police department, with the campus police, then would be notified, so-and-so is there, needs help. Again, we really thought we had a home run because approximately over like 4,000 colleges and universities, so we said this will be great. Then came the challenges. So again, just to give you a little background about this, so it's not GPS, it's not triangulation, it's basically a mesh network. So it's a mesh network that basically when you press, it just starts relaying information back and forth throughout a facility. Again, the challenges was, okay, so now we've got the right product, this should be an easy fit. And we were approached by several large universities, and it took us roughly about 2.5 years to really fine-tune, develop the product. And then the budget cuts come into play. And then we all know what happens with budget cuts. It's like, it's unfortunate, but you have to do what you can with the money that you have. We had our business plan. We had a market study where it was $1 billion industry. When they did, this was done by Ohio University. They did the market study. Our targeted market was colleges, university, pharma, and corporate. So we knew the business opportunity existed, the market potential, and business focus on safety. Then, as I mentioned, 2012 budget cuts, college, university, government. And it was interesting because we were approached by government, and then it was the same thing. It's like, yeah, we love the product, we love the idea. However, we just can't get the funding anymore. We did some beta testing, so we partnered with some large pharmaceutical companies that, I work closely with. They tested the product. They were like, this is great. Same thing with big pharma company, budget cuts. So that seems like that was the biggest hurdle that we had. The problem with technology, then you need resources, management, software development, obviously sales. I put in there sales and marketing, and I put NATO, no action, talk only. We've had a lot of people that, it's like we've hired people that they were like, oh yes, I'm closely related to this type of academia, university, and we can get you in there. Unfortunately, it was all talk. But that's just part of being in business. Some of the challenges that we have also is software development requirement because, unfortunately, like with any operating system, you need to stay up with the technology, which is software operating system, Windows 8, Windows 10. My biggest challenge is limited time availability. I'm very passionate about what I do. However, there's only so many hours in one day. So being involved in various companies, it's like it limits my time. However, I end up with the right contacts. It's just that, okay, and then somebody else needs to follow up on it. So we need to rethink our strategy. So obviously now to overcome all these budget cuts that we come across. So it's like, okay, so how can we take this product to market? Originally what we did is we went to colleges and universities, large ones, and we went to the student faculty, but it's a hard sell because, obviously, again, budget cuts, nobody wants to invest, especially from the college standpoint. Then we started to think, okay, so maybe we're pursuing the wrong folks. Maybe we should target the parents. My daughter comes to Marietta College. And, when you pay fee to come to college and you say at the end, what's another $200 a year? And that may be the best way to offer the solution is to bring it to the forefront to parents. We did several of the trade shows. Someone would stop by from time to time. They'd say, I have a daughter that goes to this college. If I buy one of these, will this work for me? It's like, no, you need to put in the infrastructure. So that's what the challenges was really is built around. It's not just one person. It's like a honeycomb. Everybody has to get involved in it, especially on the facility. Target big corporate, e.g. Amazon, UPS, interesting enough, we were approached by also Amazon. And then so it was kind of interesting because then, they're big warehouse, they have people working in different areas, and they say, well, security is an issue. So would it have worked? Yes. Problem is running out of time. There's not enough time in the day in order to pursue those opportunities. College case study, which we do have college case studies, but again, we need to take a different avenue, go after the parents for this technology, I think. Business focus on safety or change. So should we change? Maybe we shouldn't focus just on safety. Think of something else to come up with as far as the solution that we could bring to the market. Or is the market too saturated? Because everybody works with cell phone. They say, my cell phone, it works great. I know the police department here on campus, they do have like lockdown capability where they send an email, but that email it's a blast email that sends to every student. And then so how does a student send, hey, I need help and I'm right here. How do I get that information across? And again, maybe we need to find a different niche market for our product. Now the question to everyone, should we consider an internship to review and analyze, evaluate our business? I think there's a great opportunity for any candidate that wants to get involved. Reconsider our target and our targeted market. Again, are we too late with our product, our solution? I don't think so. It needs time and people dedicated to figure out, are we on track with our plan, our original plan? Again, it requires resource, which is management, software development, sales. Rethink our sales and marketing strategy. And as I mentioned earlier, then it's technology. So now we're dependent on operating systems, so we need to keep up with technology. So you need to have what we call almost have a developer so they can keep doing all the updates regarding the software. And so I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to go to our website, but the Marietta Sensor website is, you can go there, find some information. We approached different market where we thought of like, oh, maybe we have an opportunity to find equipment, or we're trying a bunch of different things, but the development costs for those technologies are very expensive. Let's just focus on one, and that one is the Marietta Sensor, which is what's called M-Avatara. It was the partners that decided to go with that name. I'm not sure why, but we decided to go with the name, and so we embrace it.
First of all, what happens in the event of an accidental notification? Is it possible to be reset by somebody? What is the process, I guess, if it was accidentally tugged by something else and there's a false notification?
There's the pull, because then we thought on the lanyard you could actually pull it, but there's also a push button, so either you could press for 1 second or you can press for 3 seconds. As far as the auto resetting, so this communicates with what we call these little battery-operated drones that creates the mesh network. So once the information is relayed for appropriate authorities, it automatically resets the device. So all of a sudden it stops beeping at that point. So then it becomes, okay, so how do you respond to the incident? You get the pop-up on your computer. It tells you this person, and you can put additional information, allergic to bee sting whatsoever. So the first responder can come in and say, well, okay, no, this person, something, either heart condition whatsoever. Yes.
You said that's battery operated?
Yes.
How long do those batteries last? And how often do we need to be replacing them or checking them to make sure we don't have an interruption of service?
The software, it's got a self-healing process. So it checks for every drone, so it's a mesh network. So basically what we did with software is like, you're right, battery, it would last roughly about 3 years. And how the device is manufactured is the software tells it just to go to sleep. So we send a signal and we keep telling just go to sleep. And then when somebody pushes the button, then it says you wake up the entire hive. The hive simply just, here's the information, just transmitted back to the base station. So that's how it works. And there's standard batteries, 3 to 5 years. And the reason that you can only get 3 to 5 years is two things. The company decided to go with standard batteries like alkaline type batteries because they're inexpensive. Once you start getting into lithium batteries, those become more expensive. But you can run diagnostics where you say, send me your voltage. And it will send its voltage. And if one is missing, then you say, okay, that one there was a problem with it.
So for example, you said you can't sell one just to one person. So
Mhm.
how many are needed on a campus before you can actually have the system operational?
You know, if you're looking at it's like for a building this size, let's say in this room here, between this room, probably some of the other rooms, you could put one of these, what we call drones. So if I press the button, then once I get notification, I roughly know where the incident may be. So to answer your question more clearly is the more you have, the better you can find where that person is. The less you have, it may require you to have what we call a perimeter. So you would have like within a 60 feet perimeter for where that device would be. So then I would know that within this area, I'm looking for someone that needs help. You know, we really thought that this was going to be a grand slam, specifically for parking garage, because then it's hard to find people, in parking garage. So, we had one potential customer that said, look, we want to put thousands. And it's like, no, then there's a problem with having too many. So to answer your question, what we do is what's called like a site survey. How many doors do you need to open in order to find a person? I guess that's what it comes down to, close to 1 to 200. It depends of how many buildings. Like there was a large university here in the state that they were like, what would it take to do the entire campus? And it was like, now we're talking 8, 10, 12-story buildings. So do you want to know by floor? Or are you okay with knowing every other floor? And then all of a sudden, some people go crazy with how many numbers they want, and it's like, it's too expensive. But when we did do our survey with the customer, the payback was going to be if you can get more than 50% of the students on board in order to do your entire facility, the payback was going to be in 1 year. And then after that, it's a money-generating business because then every student pays in, the system is already paid for. But it's hard, it's the initial investment is very challenging to overcome. But we did do it on a small scale at a local business where they have certain off hours. So they said, look, it's a 20,000 square foot building and they needed like 6 of these. And then they had like 4 of what we call the little notifiers. And that's all they needed. So after hours, somebody presses this and then this sends an email. So it's even built in that you can say, obviously the police, then they would have it on their screen. But if there's no one working at that station, the computer station, then it should be on a pager, or not a pager, a cell phone as a text message. And then for those who want students to say, hey, the parent says, you know what, I want to be notified also. You can put as many people on it. But then, panic would set in because if I would get something like that says my daughter is, I'd be the first one to start making phone calls. And it's like, oh, no, I'm sorry, I pressed it by mistake.
What kind of sales force do you currently have or have you had in the past? How do you deploy these individuals? What does it look like? We
spent a lot of money on developing. I'm going to tell you that it's in the hundreds of thousands. And then after that, so we were in close contact with a person that was well connected to several, the Big Ten universities. And that turned out to be a NATO that ended up being a costly proposition. Then I was like, I'm still, it's like failure is not an option. So then I said through my other business, which was EF Scientific, I said, I will have a sales rep, actually 2 sales reps that will go after this type of, but it was challenging. And I'll be honest with you, I'm very passionate about what I do. It's not something I could teach you. Either you have it or you don't. And then you find out that people aren't passionate. Some people are not passionate at all. So all they want is salary. And then you're like, okay, so where are we going from here?
Compensation for sales is often an issue. And so if they only had a salary and not necessarily commissions or bonuses to incentivize and motivate them, that might be something that
No,
to
true.
look at.
So there is incentive for sales. And that's within all the business. But it's always challenging to find the right people. I even put a person in Nashville, Tennessee, because I was like, out of Marietta, Ohio, there's not much. I mean, we have to travel everywhere. I used to work for Forma Scientific, and so that's what brought me to Marietta, Ohio. Then when I started at ELPRO in 2003, even Switzerland, because my partners are, the head office is in Switzerland, they said, why Marietta, Ohio? And I said, the answer is, why not Marietta, Ohio? Because out of Marietta, Ohio, if you put a circle, a 300-mile circle, you will capture roughly about 48% of the biggest pharmaceutical industries, 48 to 60% pharmaceutical, I thought. And I'm a road warrior. I will drive to New York. I've driven to Boston to meet with a large pharma company. And once I got there, the next morning they're like, yeah, we need to cancel the meeting. It happens. Most of our clients are northeast, southeast, on the West Coast with regards to ELPRO.
Is it like a certain radius that you can cover?
I'll say 100 to 150 feet in this circle. The challenges with that is, okay, so now I need to make connections to the next one. So if you have 150 feet diameter, the challenge is like, okay, so it's like the one customer that we had a discussion with, and it's like, we could only install one into or two into this one building, but then how many doors do you need to open in order to find the person?
Somebody was kidnapped and driven more than 150 feet away from a drone, then you can no longer find them?
If there's one in here and there's one outside, so then the message keeps being relayed on. Because we were approached by, again, the large university here in Ohio, and they're like, we have bus drivers that go down the route, and they pick up college students. Some of them sometimes gets out of hand, so how do we can notify? So we're like, we'll just put them on the light post, and you push a button as a driver, it'll know exactly where you are. But again, the infrastructure becomes massive. So it becomes a big undertaking, and that's where people will say, well, maybe we'd be better off using GPS-type coordinates. Well, that's great, but again, once you get into a building, GPS doesn't do anything for you. Then you get into a situation which even cell phone, they don't work in basements because there's no cell capability. So then what happens? In this one colleges, they had a lot of tunnels to go from different building, and then even in tunnels, two-way radios, walkie-talkie, those type of technologies don't even work in tunnels.
With numbers potentially being too large, but maybe a long-term project, have you thought about military applications for this technology, possibly stateside and in war zones? So just for example, when I was in Iraq, we carried bulky transponders that weighed us down, and it would be really nice to have something smaller, but also say you are involved in an IED or a mortar attack. If you're disoriented, it's a lot harder to work a transponder. If you had something that you just had to pull or press a button, that would be a very useful technology.
You really need something that has like what we call like GPRS or satellite communication. See, our device will only work once you put the drone somewhere. Obviously, then you need something to get you to a connection either by internet in order to get an email and SMS text messaging. I guess you could always use your cell phone as a way to get to the internet. So that would work. It's a good idea, what you mentioned. I don't know how big the application could be for something like that. And again, then when you start working with the DoD, Department of Defense, then you have to be an approved contractor, and all that. And at the beginning, we're like, okay, where are the low-hanging fruits rather than going that route? But yeah, you brought up a valid question. There's probably a market there, but we just need to figure out exactly how we would be able to transmit the information.
There are systems that are now set up in like nursing homes and that sort of thing. Do these work in the same way, or could that be another opportunity for you?
It's a different opportunity. They do monitor, for example, within the residence. It's a one-on-one. So my device only talks to my transponder. So what they do is they monitor like the cook stove, the oven, the door. So then that way there, if you get up in the middle of the night, they could set off an alarm. If you leave the oven running more than 2 hours, then they know something is up. So they have that type of technology. Ours is more for what we call like a wider, more non-one-way communication. Because we thought, we did try to approach that market, and right away we said, you know what, our technology is too complicated. It'd be great for, and again, because of the economy, budget cuts. And so that ended our discussion. It's really an investment, and it's challenging, especially in today's economy. The male population, they can work their way out of it, but for female, it's a little more challenging. It could be challenging, and then so instead of having a bodyguard walking her back to her dorm, this could even be placed in dorms. So if something happens, just pull and
I, for one, am going to remember Marietta Sensors telephone number for the next time someone suggests that the solution is to arm every student, faculty, and staff member with a 9mm pistol. This is a much more sane approach, and really appreciated that. I am Jim Couts. I founded Jubilee Organic Gardens 3 years ago. One caution, I am on the tail end of a cold. And just in case I break into a coughing fit, my daughter Lori will take over. She knows far more about this than I do. Anyhow, we have Plan B, just in case. The reason we are here is to collect ideas from you as to how we can better market our products. Our products are geared entirely toward developing a system of sustainable agriculture. It is an unfamiliar concept to many, many farmers, many of our customers, and so gathering your thoughts and ideas, that's the reason we're here today. First, a very brief history. Grew up on an organic farm. My father was one of the first subscribers to Organic Farming Magazine, now Organic Gardening Magazine, 1943. So I grew up in that environment, and it's certainly contributed to my passion for organic agriculture. Probably one of the most important events in my life was I founded and managed a rather large child nutrition program in Southeast Ohio. We extended from Steubenville all the way over to Cincinnati, 5,000 meals a day, and the meals were horrible. We relied on USDA reimbursements to buy the food, and it was mostly processed food. And when I retired from the Appalachian Nutrition Network approximately 6 years ago, I committed myself to spend my years in retirement to finding solutions and to create a way for locally grown, healthy, organic food to get into our school child nutrition programs. Quite frankly, about 3 years ago, I had purchased some material called coconut coir for my own garden, paid a small fortune for it through Amazon, but it was absolutely wonderful. And so my wife and I went together. We bought a semi-truckload of it, 22 tons of coconut coir, and we proceeded to sell that material to organic farmers all over Ohio. It's a substitute for peat moss, and peat moss is anything but a sustainable agricultural product. And so that's where we started. All I was going to do was to sell a truckload of coconut coir to all my friends who own organic farms. However, within a month, we were composting, mixing soil, bagging it, selling it to local gardeners. I once gave a speech to the Unitarian Church's Garden Club and sold $1,300 worth of coconut coir before it was all over. And so we knew we were on to something, and quite frankly, I fell in love with being involved in a for-profit company. I had spent my entire professional life in the nonprofit world, and this was a new experience, and I saw the potential. There's a certain level of credibility that comes when you're involved in having to make a profit in order to survive. So that's how we got started. Rather quickly, we discovered that there is a paradigm shift going on in American agriculture. The paradigm shift is simply we are moving away from assuming that industrial agriculture, chemically based fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides are the only products that produce the kind of yields that allow not only farmers to survive, but also allow us to feed a very hungry world with a growing population. We're out to prove that there is another way. There are other ways to provide organic products to agriculture that will create the kind of yields that will allow farmers to stay in business. Again, one of the reasons we're here is that that's a lot easier said than done. Farmers are quite dependent on those chemical fertilizers. We have to be very sensitive to their situation. Most farmers today, even the very large farms, are almost hopelessly in debt, and one bad year, one bad yield, and they're bankrupt. And so this all has to be handled in a very sensitive way and a very responsible way so that farming, as we know it today, can continue, but without contaminating water and soil and air in the process. There is this paradigm shift that is going on. Discovered it very quickly. Initially, all my friends said, don't set up Jubilee Gardens in Marietta, go to Athens County because they have all the environmentalists over there. But this is my home. And within a matter of weeks, discovered that that assumption was incorrect. There are many, many people here in Washington County and, of course, in the surrounding counties as well, who have already gone through that paradigm shift. And so, quite frankly, we had more customers than we had staff to handle. In the meantime, climate change has become a reality and is more and more accepted as a reality. Agriculture as we once knew it, with 90% of the produce in the United States grown in the Southwest, mostly in California, that day is basically over. The drought, climate change, other conditions in the climate have changed that, and so the entire country is looking for other locations where soil can be made healthy and can be created as healthy soil so that agriculture can expand. Developing soil so that farmers can find new ways, more environmentally friendly ways, to farm and make a profit, that was the first problem we addressed. That was easy enough. The second problem, however, is intriguing. It has to do with food waste. The problem of dumping food waste into landfills is increasingly a subject that people are talking about. President Obama in the last couple of weeks highlighted that issue. Quite frankly, it's cheap and easy and simple to load a garbage truck full of every kind of waste, not bother separating it, taking it out to Route 50, dumping it in the landfill, and not care terribly much about the tons of methane that are being produced and traveling up into the atmosphere, creating global warming. That day is also over. 5 states have outlawed food waste going into landfills, and quite frankly, one of those states, New York State, with New York City included in that, they outlawed food waste from going into their landfills, and without proper planning and an infrastructure to handle all that food waste not going into landfills, they've decided to ship it to Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. And so right now, one of our marketing strategies is to lay all the guilt we can on all of the friends we have in New York City, telling them that every pound of food waste in New York City is being dumped in our landfill down here. And won't they please buy our products? 20% of the garbage going into landfills is food waste. Rotting food waste is one of the largest contributors to methane gas in the United States. And as I indicated, 5 states have already banned food waste from going into landfills. And that's a growing phenomenon in the United States. Here at Marietta College, thanks first of all to Parkhurst Dining, it is a proactive company. It is not sitting around wondering how in the world they're going to solve the food waste problem. And Parkhurst has many, many restaurants and serves many colleges in this area, Western Pennsylvania being the largest concentration of those. And they're looking for solutions. And as I say, they don't just sit around wringing their hands. They were shipping all of the food waste until last March through a company called Futures Organics. And lo and behold, Futures Organics was bought out by a larger company, and Parkhurst was called one day telling them that their food waste would no longer be picked up. And somehow or another, they had heard about Jubilee Gardens, called us, and without giving it a whole lot of thought, I said, sure, we'll pick up your food waste. And right now, we're picking up somewhere between 4 and 6 tons weekly from Gilman Hall behind the cafeteria here. Just indicate just how crazy we are. Thanks to Fred Smith, we are expanding this to a campus-wide program. We applied for what is called a Class 2 composting license. And all that is, if you've ever composted in your backyard with some bins and you throw your grass clippings and your food waste from the kitchen, not meats and fish, just the organic material, a lot of leaves, mix all that together, keep it at a proper moisture level, turn it regularly, and in about 6 months you'll end up with a relatively small bucket of compost to put in your garden to nurture your plants. That's called aerobic or traditional composting. We're located at 900 Green Street here in Marietta. The Head Start School is about 200 feet from our property line. We have lots of residences around us, and the EPA turned us down. I kind of knew they were, and I was anticipating that, and had begun to investigate another method of breaking down food waste and converting it into soil called bokashi, or the more technical name, acidic anaerobic fermentation. It is odorless, it is pest-free, Those are very important qualities because most of the industrial level compost facilities in Ohio have been shut down because of odor and pests. And so the EPA loves us. We are collecting lots of food waste. A year from now, we're going to be collecting 4 times what we are now collecting, and therefore able to create a lot more soil. But we ferment your food waste. We turn it into pickles. If you come around our facility, I'll be happy to open one of our barrels that's been sitting there with your food waste for a couple or 3 weeks or more, and what you will smell is something akin to dill pickles. We mix that food waste with soil, and it very quickly then breaks down into a very rich soil amendment, full of microbes, full of all the good stuff that makes plants grow. It is not chemically based. It is perfectly safe. You may think, good heavens, and we take everything. We take meat and fish and everything. Everything you throw away on your tray at Gilman Hall, we'll take it. Inside those sealed containers, those barrels, the acidic level rises or drops in a way to a very high acidic level with a pH count of like 3.2. That kills all the pathogens, and then it neutralizes very quickly when we mix that with soil, and with that we can create all organic farms. Why? With traditional composting, it takes 10 tons of waste to make 1 ton of compost. Our method, it's 1 ton in and 1 ton out. That's a lot of compost. And so instead of just serving backyard gardeners, we can now realistically turn entire farms into organic farms with every bit as high yield or higher than chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides. We think we're on the cusp of a revolution.
It's a fantastic idea, and what the challenge we're facing right now is to make it an economically sustainable business, because it's a great idea. It has, I think you can see from the way he's explained it, that this could be something that could revolutionize the way that food waste is processed. There are other technologies that are in development which are all really exciting, anaerobic digestion being one, and also other forms of managing composting better in industrial facilities. But bokashi is relatively unknown in the United States. It is something that's widely used in Asia, Japan, and Korea. What we'd like to do, this is our vision. We have 2 lines of business. We have food waste collection, and we have soil and other soil products that we'd like to market and sell. I would like to get to the point where our food waste collection side is profitable, and that means working with partners, institutions that have sustainability efforts that they are willing to prioritize, like Parkhurst, like Marietta College. Fred Smith has also been incredibly helpful in this process of developing these programs. It's important that the customers that we work with are not just looking for garbage pickup, because if you compare what we do to just picking up the garbage and taking it to the landfill in Parkersburg, we're not going to compete with that. What we're offering is a kind of a closed-loop program where food waste is processed safely and effectively, turned into soil that grows crops that then is sold in the community and then eventually goes right back around the circle. So that's our vision, and we want to build that one institution at a time. Marietta College has stepped forward as being progressive and visionary. I'm an alum of Marietta College. I graduated in 1992, so I'm extremely thrilled about that. We have basically one other major customer. This account is now in development. We are going to be working at Noble County Correctional, which you may or may not be familiar with, but it's a state prison. The state prison system is unfortunately extremely large. They have a zero waste mandate from the governor, and that basically they recycle absolutely everything. They try to keep costs down. They use an in-vessel composting system. Several of them do. Many more will be coming online with that. And what that means, it's a big giant machine that costs about $150,000, and you put food waste on one end and compost comes out the other end. It's a large initial investment, and they max out at a certain capacity. So you can't overfeed the food waste into one of those in-vessel systems. They top out at about 500 pounds a day. So we are going to be actually handling the overflow waste at Noble County, and the inmates will be trained to bokashi that material themselves. We will then be taking that material and putting it into a soil farm. We recently this isn't totally official yet, but there's a coal company that has their headquarters nearby that has agreed to donate 10 acres to us it's basically compacted, reclaimed strip mine land, and we're going to be depositing the bokashi material there and turning that into a soil farm. So between Marietta College and Noble County, we're working toward a sustainable program where the food waste side is funded. Because, for one thing, we don't have any capital. We literally are doing this, pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, and we got to use some, dirty, messy gardening boots because it's a dirty business. Processing food waste, it's not for everybody. Our process is relatively clean, so it's not like you go into a facility and it smells bad. But still, it's not necessarily everybody's first choice for a part-time job. We are looking to then build our soil business. There's a limited number of institutions that are going to be able to participate in this in Ohio, in our regional area. Transportation is a big part of what we do. Our business is probably going to be mostly localized, and that doesn't mean it can't expand. We're actually going to be pitching several other prison wardens to try to expand this to other institutions in Ohio, and that will mean setting up localized programs there. But we can't be trucking extremely heavy product back to Marietta or out of Marietta. So our geographic ring, both in collecting food waste and in producing soil products, is limited because of transportation costs. So here's what we're facing. We need to market our soil products, educate farmers and gardeners about the quality of the products that we're producing, about what it does for plant yield. If you do a side-by-side comparison and you just plant a plant in your backyard, and then if you use our bokashi material in the soil, sometimes you can see a 50% larger increase in both flowering, the health of the plant, the size of the plant. It's very, very effective organic fertilizer. Organic farmers are familiar with bokashi, but most of everyone else isn't. Farmers are a conservative bunch. What we're looking to do is, how do we market our soil products? How do we educate the people who would be our customers for soil products? And how do we get our products out there locally without having a retail location? That's where we're at. We don't have $500,000 to hire a firm to launch products for us and develop marketing. We're doing it all ourselves.
So I guess my question, because you were asking specifically about marketing, do you guys identifying target audiences? Are you looking to start out with gardeners and that, or are you looking towards larger farms? Are you looking, what is that target market for that?
We produce soil for gardeners that is not made on a soil farm. In other words, it's produced at our facility using coconut coir, the peat moss alternative, and worm castings. One thing I didn't mention is that worms are very, very good at refining the bokashi even faster than nature allows it to break down. So we can produce products that can be bagged and sold to gardeners, which we've done sort of informally in the community. Diane, I think, has some of our soil at her home, and several other people in the community. But we would love to be able to have large contracts. An example, this is not a moneymaker for us, but it is something that's important to us. We're working with the Wilds, which is a conservation area, wild animals that they raise for zoos, if any of you are familiar with it. The land there is basically just solid clay. It's like concrete. It's very difficult to grow anything in. And we're very excited about it because they have their soil ecology team is going to be documenting the process very scientifically. We do not have a scientist as part of our organization, and so we are working with Eric and other people at Marietta College to help us develop and prove the science behind what we're doing, and also to test our products. We have to make sure that there are no pathogens and that every single barrel that we produce is at a level that has the correct pH, et cetera. We're looking to build relationships with scientific institutions, but we would love to do that on a larger scale with developing farms or developing soil, even for landscaping. Any soil that is sort of substandard and not producing and doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it or a lot of organic material will benefit from bokashi. And I think Jim touched on this, that our product it's 1-to-1. It's a 55-gallon drum of food waste produces a 55-gallon drum of composting material instead of 10-to-1. That has advantages and disadvantages. Aerobic composting reduces the amount of waste that you have. It also produces a tremendous amount of methane in the process. Our process is methane-free. There is zero methane. Rob Ryder, he's the soil guy. He's come around and tested our barrels several times and has now assured us that it is methane-free. However, we have to then deal with a large amount of material. It's wet material, and we have a way of putting it into the ground using tractors and pickup trucks and a lot of shoveling. But we would like to develop more mechanized ways of treating soil, going out to land, and basically putting that material into the soil and then turning it into productive land.
I'm a few years younger than Jim, and we both grew up on farms. And my German-American grandfather, he really listened to the Extension Service, and he really listened to the best practices out there. And in the late 50s and early 60s, globally, we went through something called the Green Revolution. And the Green Revolution had three components: heavily mechanized, fossil fuel-intensive agricultural production, combined with heavy use of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides, and hybridized plant species that were highly dependent upon those chemical nutrients. Well, right now we're coming to a big crisis. One, the fossil fuels are causing those problems, and the methane you're talking about from the aerobic is exacerbating climate change. Two, it's harder and harder to get better hybridized species to meet the demand, so we move to genetic engineering, and we're still trying to follow those products. But the biggest problem in my mind is what yours is the answer to. Many of these chemicals that we use for the green revolution, we're coming to the end of the easily accessible mineral stocks, phosphates and nitrates. So right behind Lori, we see the answer to that, right? Closing the loop. I came back from a conference. We were dealing with water resources, and I asked the people who are the experts in sewage treatment. You want to make a fortune? Come up with a way of taking the nitrates and phosphates out. Tell them to get into animal manure management, because there's nothing we can put on the end of the pipe to take it out. What you guys are doing, talk about the longevity of that, and this has nowhere to go but up in terms of growth.
We are so confident in this technology because we've been doing it at an industrial scale. We are probably one of the first, among at least the first 3 businesses in the United States to do this at an industrial scale. It is very, very new. We've had calls from all over the world. A couple guys from the United Arab Emirates came and toured our facility. They came and drove all the way from Canada. They're hearing about it, and there really aren't that many people doing it except in their backyard or on their farm. So what we are trying to do is make this viable. Of course, we would love to have operations all over the country, but right now what we feel that we can do is make a successful pilot here in Marietta that's profitable, that is a sustainable business. Because as we all know, there's a million great ideas out there about how to solve problems, but if you can't make it work economically, it will fizzle and die and it won't work. And so we feel that it's going to get more expensive to process food waste. That'll happen. To give you an example, it costs about $25 to dump if you're in business with a contract. In California, that rate has gone up to about $250. At $250, it's a viable business. At $25, it's not. And so that's why we have to get creative about how to make this profitable.
Is there any kind of trade between the processed soil that they could then be utilizing? If let's say Parker's had a garden that they were growing food. Do you barter garbage for the enriched soil?
We would like to create a system in Marietta with Parkhurst where we have a large greenhouse operation where we use the soil that we produce using the food waste. We produce vegetables that are organically grown for Parkhurst to then serve in the cafeteria or to use in any of their other facilities.
And as a matter of fact, that gets right to Eric's point and his question. Raw manure, for instance, is a major contributor to the water pollution and pollution of the soil itself. It goes beyond the use of chemicals. Raw manure is one of the big problems. We actually market materials that will break down raw manure in 45 days instead of 6 months. And what can then be spread on the field is a very rich organic material, not the high phosphate problems. As a matter of fact, the city of Toledo, went without water for several days about a year ago, and it was primarily raw manure that was causing that. We have the solution. Lori got right to the problem. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough staff. I was a bit opportunistic. The day after the Toledo water crisis hit the papers, I was in Toledo meeting with farmers. But at the time, we didn't have enough of a facility to manufacture everything they needed. We don't have a sales staff. That also is expensive to hire. We need staff. We need money. We need equipment. The kind of suggestions that we're hearing today are helpful. The partners are really right here in Washington County. A lot of big farmers, mostly raising animals, and we have some solutions to the very problems that those animals are creating.
I'm going to make a little prediction. In 10 years, you can come back and hit me over the head if I'm wrong. In 10 years, that'll be 50 states because we're running out of space in landfills. We don't want organic material in there. Nobody wants a new landfill. You're basically at the bottom of a startup curve, and you can go one of two ways or both. You can grow, or you can grow to the point where you can become the foundation for franchisees, or both. Because this is something that is not just going to be a good thing for Marietta and Southeast Ohio. This is something that we need to be doing everywhere. Maintain food supply, handle food waste without creating pollution.
Is the immediate issue for you in terms of product the food waste, or is it the market for the product that comes out the Kashi process?
It's hard to find somebody that will pick up food waste. Here, you can just throw it into a landfill if you want to. There's nothing stopping people from doing that. Our challenge is without capital with 2 people and a lot of wonderful people who are helping us in the community. We have other products for farmers, a series of products that are also microbial products. It's this EM1. It activates fermentation, but it also exists as a liquid product that will kill odor immediately. I mean, it's kind of an amazing thing. And there are farmers, we just toured the Southwest, huge farms, 18,000 dairy cows, and they all use this stuff. And that's something no one's ever heard of around here. I mean, Ohio has a lot of farming, but not right around here. I mean, we do have farming, but it's not at the scale that you see in other parts of the country. You would not call this a big agriculture area. It's all small farms. We have challenges with that. I mean, I feel like our soil is so good that we could easily roll it out to Lowe's and garden centers all over the country, and it would be very popular. But getting from here to there requires money and expertise, some of which we have, some of which we don't have. So that's our challenge.
With that being said, then, that it sounds like you have an excess of soil compared to gathering food waste. Have you thought about pairing up with Hucks and some of the other gardening facilities around here? Because then that would also reach local people who like to garden. Like, as someone who lives in Marietta, I'd never heard of Jubilee soil. It's just a thought to get to local people here in town.
We haven't obviously done a good enough job if you've never heard of us. We have spoken with Witten's, Hucks, every major produce farm in the area. What Lori just said is true. We are certainly not as large of an agricultural area as Northwest Ohio, for example. However, agriculture still is the #1 industry in Washington County. And so there are ample opportunities here for marketing. Actually, our conversations with Witten's and Hucks and so on started out with a lot of skepticism on their part. There are lots of companies selling organic products, but now we are beginning to get some interest. And so I'm anticipating success in the future. We're working very, very hard to coordinate the manufacturing of soil with the customer base so that we're manufacturing enough to meet the needs, but not so much. We sit on 13 and a half acres right here in the middle of Marietta, and I actually had a nightmare one night that we had covered all 13 and a half acres with barrels of compost, and we were having to cart it off to a landfill because we had no place to put it. That was one of the worst nightmares I've ever had. The point is, yes, we're trying to make the market match our ability to manufacture this stuff. We can manufacture compost all day long, and it's always a chicken and an egg thing. Fred just intimated that food waste is available, and so here we are. We're not only taking tons of food waste from Parkhurst, we're about to launch a zero waste project here on campus and take more of it. Why are we doing that? Partly because it's a great way to educate people about the products. We're asking you to become, if you're not already eating at Gilman Hall, if you're eating at home and you're producing food waste, we want you to participate in this program, and there will be a lot more information going out. We're not turning down food waste. Between the prison, the new program at Marietta College, and Parkhurst, we probably have as much as we can handle right now, and we're looking for ways so that 2 years from now, we're having to look for new sources of food waste to meet the need. There are tons of our soil in the community garden over behind Food for Less, and Harvest of Hope is creating more opportunities along that line. To tell you the truth, part of the reason Lori is here is that for the first 3 years, I gave away more soil than I sold. That is not a sustainable business plan. And the community gardens, Harvest of Hope, and Marietta in Bloom, Belpre in Bloom, Parkersburg in Bloom, all of them have my soil. That's wonderful, and I have felt good about that. There really came a point in time when I had to ask the question, is this my hobby, or is it going to be a sustainable business? And I'm going for a sustainable business.
Couldn't you use the high yields from the community gardens, the produce in the community gardens, as a marketing device to promote that to local businesses?
We're actually getting something out of Noble County Prison. They are setting up test gardens to test our products, different recipes, and so on. We're going to film all of that and use the different levels of growth and yield to make our point. The community garden is a little bit more difficult to do that. The community garden is not certainly exclusively organic. As a matter of fact, Miracle Grow is more common at the local community garden than our soil is. And so it's a little more difficult to do that. We have test gardens at our facility. I don't know if Marietta College is totally comfortable with this. Personally, I'm telling everybody that you are our unofficial academic partner. And I hope you don't mind, because the brain power on this campus is what we need in order to do the kind of research you're getting at. Yesterday afternoon, I'll end with this, got a call from a student who either had procrastinated or she's taking too many courses, and so she desperately needed to interview me for a paper that was due on Monday. But we're getting that kind of response everywhere on campus. Students are calling us, asking us to help.
Next session, November 12th. That's also a Thursday. See you later.